One of the mysteries of Britain's ancient Stonehenge.
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 Stonehenge. Stonehenge.
Stonehenge.
The oldest stones at Stonehenge are the most perfectly crafted. Not the newest, the oldest. The skill didn't build over time. It vanished. In 2024, a joint British-American research team fed every microscopic detail of the monument into advanced neural networks. And what those algorithms decoded hidden inside the stones, patterns no human eye had ever detected, has left the scientific community without answers.
For centuries, experts have wondered why England's Stonehenge was built. The reasons behind the prehistoric stone circle are still a mystery, but a new app allows us to take a virtual acoustic tour in it and hear how it would have sounded thousands of years ago with all the stones in their original place.
What follows is exactly what the AI found, and why no one can explain it. The scan that changed everything. A research team made a decision that would change everything we thought we understood about the ancient world. Instead of digging, instead of theorizing, instead of arguing over the same interpretations that had circled for decades, they decided to scan every stone, every surface, every buried fragment.
Stonehenge. Myth and legend have always surrounded its origins. It's been called both a healing site and a place of human sacrifice.
Using ground-penetrating radar, aerial LiDAR, photogrammetry drones, and high-resolution 3D laser scanners, they built a complete digital twin of the entire monument. Every groove, every tool mark, every surface irregularity down to fractions of a millimeter, the standing stones, the buried remnants, the fallen lintels, the landscape stretching miles in every direction. Then they did something no one had ever attempted. They fed all of it, every scan, every measurement, every data point, into neural networks trained to recognize patterns in ancient construction and acoustic engineering.
Unknown civilization living right here of Bronze Age people.
Algorithms designed to see what human eyes cannot. Patterns too subtle, too vast, too deeply embedded in the stone to detect by hand. What came back made the room go very, very quiet. Tool marks that shouldn't exist. Under microscopic analysis, the AI identified at least 5 distinct working techniques used to shape the sarsen stones. The first was exactly what anyone would expect: pecking and grinding with stone. Standard Neolithic methods documented at dozens of prehistoric sites across Britain. But the second technique is where things got uncomfortable. Along specific surfaces of the stones, particularly on the lintels and the tongue and groove joints.
Archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson is leading one of the biggest archaeological investigations of modern times, a 7-year project to unlock the mystery surrounding Stonehenge.
The AI found shaping so precise, it defies everything we associate with the Stone Age. Curved surfaces with less than 2 millimeters of deviation across spans of 2 meters, 2 millimeters over 6.5 feet, to form a perfect circle when placed atop the uprights. That level of geometric sophistication requires calculation. It requires measurement. It requires something that supposedly did not exist in Neolithic Britain. Dr. David Nash at the University of Brighton described the moment bluntly. The level of uniformity they found in the sarsen stones exceeds what anyone would expect from traditional percussion and grinding methods. The curvature of the lintels, designed to form a continuous ring 30 meters in diameter, demands systematic planning and measurement that goes far beyond intuition. The AI compared these surface profiles to thousands of known tool signatures from the Neolithic period across Britain. 0 matches, not a single comparable technique from anywhere in the British Isles during this era. But here is the catch. If unknown tool marks were the only anomaly, the scientific community could absorb it. Strange things show up in the archaeological record all the time. Outliers get filed away. Exceptions get footnoted. But the precision was just the beginning. Because when the neural networks turned their attention to how sound moves through those stones, a researcher named Dr. Rupert Till at the University of Huddersfield nearly fell out of his chair. It wasn't a temple. It was a machine. Dr. Till had spent years studying the acoustic properties of ancient sites. He had always suspected Stonehenge had sonic characteristics. But when the AI finished its acoustic analysis, what appeared on his screen went far beyond anything he had theorized. The algorithm detected that the precise spacing and shape of the sarsen stones creates a phenomenon called constructive interference. Sound waves generated inside the circle don't dissipate. They amplify.
In my background sound, so what struck me immediately about this space was what it sounded like inside. And so we wanted to model that sound and hear what it might have sounded like 5,000 years ago.
Voices, drums, or chanting at frequencies between 95 and 120 hertz. The range of a deep male voice or a large drum would have reverberated through the completed structure with an almost supernatural amplification effect. The stone circle would have roared. But here is the catch. This acoustic effect was not a happy accident. The stones had to be positioned with extreme precision. Shift any single sarsen by even 1 meter, and the acoustic properties collapse entirely. The AI calculated the probability of this level of acoustic perfection happening by random chance. Less than 1 in 10,000. The builders of Stonehenge understood acoustic engineering principles that would not be formally documented until the ancient Greeks, 2,000 years later. They somehow knew how to position 25-ton megaliths to create cathedral-like sound amplification using what we call Neolithic technology. Skeptics point out that any circular arrangement of tall stones will produce some acoustic effects. And that is true. But Dr. Till noted the critical distinction. The Stonehenge effects are not general. They are specific, targeted, optimized for particular frequencies. The difference between a room that happens to echo and a concert hall designed by an engineer. And the acoustics were not even the most impossible thing the AI found. If this is already changing how you think about the ancient world, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what the AI found next makes the acoustics look like a warm-up. Mathematics that predate mathematics. When the algorithms started mapping the geometry of the stone placement, archaeoastronomer Dr. Gail Higginbottom at the University of Oxford saw numbers appear on her screen that made her call the rest of the team into the room. The AI had mapped the exact positions of every stone, both standing and fallen, and analyzed them for geometric relationships. What it found should not be there. Pythagorean triangles. Right triangles with sides in the exact ratio of 3 to 4 to 5. The theorem that carries Pythagoras' name would not be formally described until 500 BCE in ancient Greece. That is 2,000 years after Stonehenge was built. And this was not one coincidental triangle. The neural network identified at least 7 distinct Pythagorean relationships built into the monument's layout, in the spacing between stone circles, in the relationships between the Aubrey holes and the sarsen circle, in the geometry connecting the station stones. 7. the AI also found evidence of precise knowledge of pi. The Sarsen circle's diameter and circumference show a relationship of 3.14 to 1, accurate to within 99.7%. For reference, the ancient Egyptians calculated pi as 3.16. The Babylonians used 3.125. Neolithic Britain, supposedly a land of primitive farmers with stone tools, got closer to the true value than either of them. But here is the catch. Mainstream researchers argue that Pythagorean relationships and approximations of pi can emerge naturally from basic geometric construction. Lay out a circle with a rope and a stake, and you will produce these ratios without understanding the math behind them. That is a reasonable counterargument. And if geometry were the end of it, the debate might stop there. But the AI did not stop at geometry. It reconstructed the night sky as it would have appeared over Salisbury Plain in 2500 BCE and compared it to the precise positions of stones, buried post holes, and landscape features. Everyone knows Stonehenge aligns with the summer solstice sunrise. That alignment is the obvious one, the surface layer. Underneath it, Stonehenge encodes the 18.6-year lunar cycle, the time it takes for the moon's maximum declination to complete a full oscillation. One of the most complex astronomical phenomena observable from Earth. To even recognize the pattern exists requires tracking the moon continuously for nearly 2 decades. The station stones, 4 stones, positioned in a rectangle around the main circle, mark the extreme positions of this lunar cycle with pinpoint accuracy. The AI calculated that achieving this level of alignment requires decades of systematic astronomical observation and mathematical calculation, knowledge that was supposedly lost until modern astronomy rediscovered it. Encoded in stone, in Neolithic Britain, trial and error does not explain tracking a cycle that takes 18.6 years to complete. No one stumbles into that with a rope and a stake. And then the team looked at the timeline. That is when everything fell apart. The discovery that broke everything. This is the finding that keeps researchers awake. The one that turns the entire story of human progress on its head. When the AI analyzed Stonehenge's construction phases, distinguishing which stones were placed during different periods based on tool marks, weathering patterns, and working techniques, it revealed something that contradicts every assumption we hold about how societies develop. The earliest stones show the highest precision. The first Sarsen circle and the trilithons, erected around 2500 BCE, have the tightest joints, the most sophisticated shaping, the most accurate astronomical alignments. These are the stones with the impossible acoustic engineering, the embedded Pythagorean geometry, the 18.6-year lunar tracking. Later additions and modifications made over the following centuries show progressively declining quality. Cruder shaping, looser joints, less accurate alignments. By the final construction phase around 1600 BCE, the work is markedly inferior to the original. This is backwards, and not just slightly, fundamentally. Every civilization in recorded history gets better at building things the more they practice. The Egyptians built increasingly sophisticated pyramids over time, from the crude step pyramid at Saqqara to the geometrically perfect Great Pyramid at Giza. The Greeks refined their architecture generation after generation, evolving from simple megaron halls to the breathtaking precision of the Parthenon. The Romans improved upon everything they inherited. That is how human progress works. You learn, you improve, you pass your knowledge forward, and the next generation surpasses you. Every model of cultural evolution depends on this principle. It is the foundation. But at Stonehenge, the peak came first. Then a slow, centuries-long decline. Not stagnation, not plateau. Decline. Active, measurable, undeniable regression across every metric the AI could quantify. Dr. Nash's team ran the tool mark analysis against more than 50,000 examples of Neolithic stonework from across Europe. The earliest Stonehenge marks cluster as statistical outliers, showing characteristics more similar to Bronze Age, or even later metalworking precision, despite radiocarbon dates placing them firmly in the Neolithic. When the data was projected onto a timeline and displayed for the full research team, the room went still. Dr. Susan Graney, a senior historian with English heritage who had spent over a decade studying the monument, stared at the screen for a long moment before speaking. She said she had always believed the standard model, that Stonehenge represented a community learning and refining over generations, that the monument told the story of people getting better at what they do. But the data on the screen told the opposite story. The earliest builders were the masters, and every generation that followed them knew less. She described the feeling in the room as the slow realization that an answer you had always taken for granted might be completely wrong. Not a dramatic revelation, not a gasp, something quieter and far more destabilizing. The kind of realization that doesn't just change one conclusion. It restructures everything built on top of it. Every paper published, every textbook chapter written, every confident lecture delivered to a hall full of students, explaining how Neolithic societies gradually developed the skills to build monuments like Stonehenge. All of it suddenly balanced on a premise that the data no longer supports, because this creates a paradox that no one has resolved. Either the radiocarbon dating is wrong, which would undermine decades of established chronology, or the builders possessed capabilities far beyond what we attribute to their era. Either explanation dismantles a pillar of the accepted narrative. It is as if the original builders possessed knowledge that later generations could not replicate. As if subsequent builders were maintaining traditions and techniques they no longer fully understood. As if Stonehenge was not built by people discovering monumental construction for the first time, but by inheritors of knowledge who were already losing what they once had. Whatever culture raised that first circle, they were not learning, they were remembering. And generation by generation, the memory faded until only the stones remained. What lies beneath? When the neural networks processed the ground-penetrating radar data from the surrounding landscape, they detected structures underground that have never been fully excavated. The Aubrey holes, 56 pits in a perfect circle, are well known. But the AII identified at least 200 additional post holes, pits, and buried features forming geometric patterns no human eye had ever recognized. Stonehenge was not a standalone monument. It was the centerpiece of a vast ceremonial landscape stretching across several square miles. And the transport data only deepened the mystery. The blue stones that traveled 150 miles from Wales were not randomly selected from one convenient quarry. Chemical analysis proved the builders traveled across the Preseli Hills, identified specific stones from multiple different outcrops, and transported only those chosen stones to Salisbury Plain. Some researchers believe they were selected for their acoustic properties. Strike them, and they ring like bells. But the AI detected something else. When arranged in the specific configuration found at Stonehenge, the blue stones create subtle magnetic anomalies in the local geomagnetic field. Neolithic people selecting stones based on magnetic properties, hauling them 150 miles, and arranging them in a configuration that manipulates the local magnetic field. Unless they already understood magnetism, how would they even begin to discover this? But here is the catch. When researchers combined the acoustic analysis of the stone circle with the landscape features the AI had mapped, they discovered that the ridges and valleys surrounding Stonehenge are not entirely natural. Sections of the terrain show evidence of massive earth moving, artificial shaping on a megalithic scale. And those shaped ridges channel sound in very specific directions. The entire landscape functions as a massive acoustic amplification system. If sounds were produced at certain points outside the monument, drumming, chanting, horns, the landscape would funnel that sound directly toward the stone circle. And there, the sarsen stones would amplify it. To anyone standing inside the circle, it would have sounded like the voices of gods were rising from the earth itself. The AI estimated that shaping this landscape would have required moving hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of earth, thousands of people working for decades. And that is just the landscape preparation before a single stone was placed. Some researchers now propose that Stonehenge was an ancient astronomical computer, a physical calculating device for tracking celestial cycles and predicting eclipses. The stone positions, the sight lines, the buried post holes, all functioning as components of a sophisticated prediction system. This would explain why the monument was maintained and modified for 1,500 years. They were refining and updating the calculations. It would explain why later builders seemed less skilled. They were maintaining a machine they no longer fully understood. But there is a darker interpretation. The 18.6-year lunar cycle that Stonehenge tracks affects tides, which influence climate. Some researchers have correlated extreme points in this cycle with historical floods, earthquakes, and severe weather events. The AI detected that Stonehenge's alignments allow observers to predict when these extreme points will occur. Not a temple for worship, a survival tool, a permanent record of dangerous astronomical cycles carved into stone so the warnings would endure, even if the people and their knowledge did not. And Stonehenge is not alone. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 6,000 years earlier, appears to encode warnings about cosmic impacts. The Nebra sky disk from Germany tracks celestial events linked to climate shifts. Newgrange in Ireland has acoustic properties that rival Stonehenge. Carnac in France has over 3,000 standing stones in complex geometric patterns. What if there was a shared tradition spreading across Neolithic Europe? A body of knowledge about astronomical cycles and their connection to catastrophe. A tradition of building warnings in the only medium that lasts forever, stone. Only about 5% of the Stonehenge site has been fully excavated. The AI has detected underground chambers and passages that have never been opened, buried geometric patterns that no one has yet decoded. Every year, scanning technology gets more powerful. Every year, something new appears in the data that should not be there. The earliest work at Stonehenge is the most sophisticated. The knowledge did not grow. It faded. Whatever culture built that first circle was not at the beginning of something. They were at the end. And here is the detail that lingers. Among the 200 buried features the AI identified beneath Salisbury Plain, there is one structure, deep below the surface, that the algorithms flagged, but could not classify. It matches no known Neolithic construction type. It matches no Bronze Age precedent. It sits directly on the central axis of the monument, aligned with the same astronomical sight lines encoded in the stones above it. And it has never been excavated. It has never been opened. Whatever is inside has been sealed in the earth for 4,500 years, waiting. Smash that like button and subscribe. Because next time, we are going inside another ancient site where AI scanners found something buried that should not exist. And that one might be even harder to explain.